Good morning. I'm going to call this session Zigzag, and it's about my career. My career consisted of lots of zigs and zags. When I started out, I was really interested in access to legal services in my role as counsel to Clint Bamberger, who was then the director of the first legal services program at the Office of Economic Opportunity. But I always had another interest in housing and community development. So when I left OEO, I ended up working for Mayor D'Alessandro in the city of Baltimore, helping plan what was then known as their housing component of their Model Cities program. And I moved from that role into a private practice lawyer role in Washington, D.C., representing organizations and nonprofits that were interested in the new housing and community development legislation, which had recently passed as part of initially Johnson's Great Society program. So I spent a few years doing that. I actually moved away from the practice of law and ended up running what was then known as the Model Cities Planning Institute, which was an educational organization set up to train planners in cities on how to plan and evaluate the impact of their housing programs on the community. In that role, I had to learn a lot about planning and evaluation technology, a completely new discipline that I knew nothing about when I became director of the Model Cities Planning and Evaluation Institute, which was the result of me winning a federal contract against actually a lot of competition. So that organization was really unique in its role in training local city officials on planning and evaluation technology. But it was a zag. It was completely different than my earlier training. And then from that role, I moved into the world of alternative higher education, where I found myself running a turnaround company to help universities deliver distant learning programs throughout the United States. So in that role, we actually ended up becoming a major supplier of graduate legal education to U.S. military bases in the United States. And that became very successful. That whole period lasted from about 1970 to 1978, when I moved back to Washington, D.C., and zagged again to help Edgar and Jean Kahn create Antioch Law School, which was the first clinical law school. And that experience really got me back into the world of legal, where I set up one of the first paralegal training programs at Antioch, and also created a master's degree program for non-lawyers to learn legal skills. So in that trajectory, I found myself, the theme that connected them was education, because previously I was working in alternative non-traditional education, and then at Antioch I was again creating a non-traditional education program for non-lawyers to learn legal skills and for paralegals to learn the paralegal trade, which again morphed into acquiring the Institute for Paralegal Training in Philadelphia, but that's how I got to it. So that kept me on a track of education and the intersection between education and law, and education and continuing education. All of these activities were marked by entrepreneurism. Even though I did a little bit of teaching in these programs, basically my role was as an entrepreneur and a manager, and thinking through how to make these activities financially successful. So I got a reputation as kind of a little bit of a turnaround manager, an entrepreneur in these intersections between traditional activity like traditional education and non-traditional education. Some of you may know my experience with the Institute for Paralegal Training eventually crashed and burned because we had so much competition it was no longer viable. So I had a down period, but I kind of came out of that and went back to, again, teaching at not only University of Maryland Law School, but several other law schools on the intersection between law and technology and the way in which technology could have an impact on the practice of law. I think the internet came along around 1995, 96, and that really captured my interest because I saw that as basically a totally new environment which could provide access to legal information. And my first foray into the intersection between the internet and law and access to law was the People's Law Library of Maryland. So that was another zag. As I've told many times, I was hoping unrealistically to be able to continue to teach at University of Maryland Law School, but the regular faculty didn't really think much of the internet. They thought it was going to be a fad and just go away. So I decided to quit my job and created my initial company, which actually exists to this day. I think it was called Network Legal Solutions at the time, around 1998, where I started to entrepreneur different projects on the intersection of law and the internet. So I consider that to be kind of another zag. And that eventually got me to Epoch, which was a company doing similar things in London, but had a very powerful document assembly solution that I wanted to access for the United States. So in our discussions, it turned out they wanted to acquire my little company with the idea that they were going to go public with this, which I agreed to be acquired, but going public never happened because of the dot-com bust. But we enabled us to get the capital to develop a whole variety of projects in the United States, which provided access to legal information to users and consumers.